welcome to Cooking with Love. My name's Linda Verasso, and usually if you've seen in my other episodes, you know at this point I often like to introduce my mom, and I get very excited about cooking with her. But today I gave her a little break, and the reason I did is because we're cooking somewhere else today. If you look behind me in this beautifully appointed kitchen, what you're seeing here is the brand new kitchen studio at the Hingham Cable offices, right down in Pond Park. And for the last several months, the folks here have done an amazing job at setting up all kinds of different studio sets. And the one I'm standing in front of right now, the kitchen, they've really done an amazing job with. And I really look forward to taping lots of episodes here. Because truth be told, it's much better than my kitchen at home. So I'll stay here anytime they let me. But the first thing we're going to do is to show you what it is we're going to cook today. So given this was our first show, and given the time of year, we thought it only made sense to cook a turkey. So Thanksgiving a few weeks away, we're going to show you how we cook turkeys in stuffing, and hopefully take the angst that you might feel as your holiday approaches. We're going to take that all away from you because, again, if you've watched me, you know it doesn't have to be hard. You know there's no wrong way to do things. It's just a matter of making sure you put that love into it. And when you do, then it's all going to be fabulous. So let's get started. We're going to start right away with the turkey. Now, before we actually bring out the bird, I want to talk to you a little bit about the types of turkeys we got. So, you'll have to forgive me because I'm going to use my notes because there's a lot of them. As far as turkeys go and what the best one to get is, it really is personal preference. You get your free-range birds, you got your organic ones, you've got those that are pre-based, you've got those that have the little pop-up things in it. It really doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you like to work with, or maybe is on sale, because you know I'm big about sales, whatever it is that is on sale that works for your family, then by all means grab that turkey. As far as after you figure out what kind of turkey you're going to have, then you get to decide, all right, well, before you cook it, there's all kinds of prep that could go into it. And I say could because you've probably heard a lot of folks talk about things like brining. And that is something that has to be done over several hours and usually overnight. And there's other ways to do it. You can either do a wet brine, which is what I just mentioned. You could do a dry brine. You could just do which is also known, by the way, as heavy salt. Or you could just do it plain and season it yourself right before you cook it. Now, after you figure out, okay, I got my turkey, I think I'm going to do it a particular way in prepping, the last thing you need to figure out is how are you going to cook it. Now, I'm sure you have seen some of those YouTube videos. If you haven't, you need to watch them on the folks who never deep fried a turkey before, and they decided they were going to try that. Do me a favor, go watch some of those videos before you decide to try it, because not only is it tough, it's incredibly dangerous if you don't do it the right way. So if you don't have the right equipment, if you've never done that before, let's just put the deep frying thought off to the side, at least for your first turkey, and try that another day. Make sure when you do, by the way, you have an extinguisher next to you. So you could deep fry it. I don't recommend it. You could also grill it, believe it or not. If you have a good sized grill, you can do kind of an indirect grilling method. And that takes a little longer than your typical roast, but it does give it a different kind of flavor. And one that a lot of people enjoy. Again, you're just going to have to take care to give yourself extra time than you would if you're doing roasting it in a kitchen, in a regular kitchen oven. And of course, the last way is a regular roasting, the traditional roast. And in fact, that's how we're going to do it today. When you see me and do some of these shows, you know I'm pretty much a purist. I like doing things as simple as possible with the most flavor. And honestly, simple is usually the way to go as far as I'm concerned. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to take we're going to take a regular bird, which we've already got. Our bird actually has a little pop-up in it, although we are going to keep that in mind, or I should say, make sure we actually check the temperature, and we'll talk through that. And then we're going to show you what we do with that bird in just a seasoning and then a plain roast and go from there. So let me grab this turkey. It's right behind me here. This is about a 13-pound bird. Now I've already taken the wrapper off of it from the store. It's actually just a store brand, I believe, Stop and Shop. The only thing I'll tell you when you take off the wrapper is be careful with your knife. And what I mean by that is usually they come in a very tight wrapper. If you were to take a knife, for instance, like this, and try to open the wrapper, say slide it down, what's going to happen is you're going to slice that skin. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that because when you see those beautiful Norman Rockwell pictures of turkey and that beautiful golden skin on top, if you were to slice that even a little, when it cooks and starts getting golden, it'll pull away and the meat will be exposed. And not only won't it look as good as you probably want it to, it'll also start to dry out the meat that's right underneath it. So you want to do your best not to do that. So therefore, when you're removing the wrapper, I usually turn it over so you can see that there's a little void here. I'll just put my knife in a little bit and I'll take the rest off with my hands. And that way you're safe and you haven't touched the skin. So this, as I said, is a 13-pound bird. How big of a bird do you need? Well, how many people in your family? How many people are you feeding? Rule of thumb, about a pound per person. That will give you plenty of food for everybody and a few leftovers. If you like a lot of leftovers, if you want a lot of folks to actually take the leftovers home, then maybe raise that to about 1.5 pounds or so. But it's a pound per person is your usual way of doing it. So this is about a 13-pound bird. We can feed, up to 13 people or probably a few more with this. All I've done right now is taken it off of the wrapper. I put it on a cookie sheet. You can use whatever you want. I like to do this because it kind of captures the juices as you're moving it around. When you have it unwrapped, there's a couple things you want to do to it before you actually get it ready to put in the oven. The first is inside the breast cavity, you're going to kind of stick your hand in here and you should find the neck right here. This is the neck of the turkey. You want to pull that out. Usually in the back area here, if you lift up this little flap of skin which they keep, that's where they usually put in this little bag of giblets. Now sometimes they'll put it in there, but more often than not, it's in the back here. And what's in this little bag, I'll open it up for you, is the kidneys, the liver, and the heart of the turkey. Now, some people like to use that in the gravy. I'm not one of them, so we're just going to put that aside. What I do like to do with both the neck and the giblets, however, is while the turkey is cooking, you can add it to a pot of water and let them simmer. And what you're making is just a little bit of turkey stock. And what happens there is you can use that same stock to add to your gravy and to make your gravy at the end of the meal. But for now, I just want to show you how you take those out and put them aside. The next thing that we do, and actually let me put them over here to get them out of our way. The next thing that you want to do is to tuck the wings in. Now, some people believe that trussing a turkey, which means you'll take butcher's twine and you wrap it all around so everything is nice and close like that. They say it gives it, keeps the meat juicier, or they have all their reasons for doing it. And you're welcome to do that. Usually now, when you get a turkey, it has a mechanism like this here, which holds the legs close in. That's really what you need to do as far as the legs go. And I think just about every one of them has it. The wings, however, are what we want to deal with. They have this last little segment of the wing, as you can see, is very thin. If you were to just leave it alone, it would really overcook. So what I like to do is you just take that, and it may feel a little strange. You're going to literally force it down, lift the turkey up, and tuck it underneath. Okay? That's all you have to do. So you open it up. You can see I'm just forcing it down with my fingers. Just force it down, lift the turkey up, and tuck it underneath. Then you just kind of put them in like that. And what you're left with is a bird that's nice and close together. It's going to look beautiful, just like the pictures when it comes out. And you won't have any little bits that are just so dry and overcooked that you can't eat them. Okay? So then, after we've got it all tucked in and happy like that, the only thing that I do to my turkey, and trust me when I tell you I've made a lot of turkeys in my life, I use salt, pepper, and this is a little bit of olive oil. It's a light olive oil. The key here is to make sure that you're generous enough. If you take and there's a couple keys. One is make sure you're generous enough with your spices, but also keep in mind as you're doing that, you'll notice that I've put some salt and pepper in some separate little dishes. I've done that because what I don't use, we're going to end up throwing out, okay? We're going to end up throwing that out because, as you can tell, I'm here handling raw turkey here. I'm going to go over to my dish and I'm going to grab the salt and put it around it, and I'll show you how we do that. Then I'm going to go back to that same dish again. Clearly, you don't want to go put that excess salt in your salt shaker, or you're going to have some really unhappy people. So first thing is to make sure that you isolate some salt and pepper, as much as you think you might need, to take care of seasoning your turkey. So that's what I've got here, and I've got quite a bit. There's at least probably about a quarter cup of salt here, and I'm going to use quite a bit of it. So I literally will just take a good amount in my hand, and the first thing I like to do is lift up the bad boy, and then we put it right inside the cavity, okay? We're going to take it and just kind of try to, by the way you hold the turkey and pour in the salt at the same time, it'll kind of hit the roof or the base, and you just want to do put a pretty good amount of salt in there. It's a thick turkey. There's a lot of meat here. It can handle a lot of salt. And then you're going to take some more, and you're going to spread it all around the top here. And you can see, you're looking at me probably saying, my God, that's a lot of salt. Don't worry about it. Trust me on this one. Make sure you flip it over. Don't ever forget the back side here. It's also a good view, actually, of what those wings look like when they're tucked in. Okay. Since we're already flipped over, let's take some pepper. It's not a quarter cup of pepper. It's less than that, but if you like a lot of pepper, have a field day. All right, we're going to take some more pepper. We're going to put that on the inside, just like we did with the salt. And then we're going to take the final bit here, all around the bird. Try to be generous. And then we have our salt and pepper. Last thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of oil around the top, flip it around the back. Now you can see why you want to make sure you do it on a cookie sheet of some sort, or a big board that will actually collect the juices as you're doing this. So just rub that all around. And that's going to give it that beautiful golden color that you get when it cooks. All right. Okay, once you've done that, you can take it. My hands are filthy. Wipe those off. And you're going to put it on a rack in your pan. Now here, this is called the V-rack. I think it's probably pretty obvious why it's called the V-rack. It's going into a shallow roasting pan. You've probably seen big old turkey roasting pans and all that. If you have a huge turkey, by all means, get a big old roasting pan. This is not a huge turkey. You can make shift stuff. Don't go spend money on things you're going to use once a year if you can make it work for you with what you have at home. This is actually a pan's probably older than me, and I'm pretty old. My mother's pan, actually. And this V-rack is probably just as old. They fit together. We're going to go with it. All you do is you're going to pick up this turkey from underneath, and put it right here on the rack, and you are now ready to cook the turkey. It's as simple as that. To cook the turkey, we're going to put it at 325, and it's about 4 pounds an hour, 3 to 4 pounds of turkey per hour. So if I've got a 12 or 13 pound turkey, it's going to take about 3 to 4 hours to do. So we're going to take this, and you'll notice I did not put any water in the pan. We keep it dry. The juices from the turkey are going to be generated as it cooks. You don't want to keep any water in there because it doesn't make the skin as nice and crispy as I like to have it. So we're going to leave it exactly like that as a total dry roast. We're going to put it in a 325-degree oven. I'm not going to baste it. I'm going to just let it cook. There's no reason to keep opening and closing that door. As long as you do it the way I told you here, just put it in the oven. Come check it probably maybe 2 hours in just to make sure everything looks right. Then check it about 30 minutes before it's supposed to be done. And if you don't have the pop-up type, we're going to show you how to actually check the temperature on it. But even if you do have the pop-up type, I want you to check the temperature as well. The other thing you'll notice is I do not stuff it. And I do not stuff it for a couple of reasons. First of which, it takes longer to cook. And that, I'm not usually very patient when it comes to waiting for dinner. The second reason, and actually the more important reason, is that stuffing inside a turkey when you cook it, you've got to be very careful. You have to absolutely make 100% sure that the temperature of that stuffing right in the center of that turkey gets to 165 degrees, which it unfortunately does not until after the turkey is already cooked. So the danger there is overcooking your turkey to get the stuffing where it should be. I think that's a little crazy. As much as it tastes delicious, we'll just make a delicious stuffing and not have to worry about that aspect to it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We're going to put this in the oven, and then I'm going to come back and show you how we make the stuffing. Okay, so now that we got the turkey safely in the oven and cooking up, we're going to move to the stuffing. And as I mentioned, we can do that now because I do not stuff the bird. If you choose to stuff the bird, however, you're welcome to do that. You still want to do this step, but obviously you'll do this step, stuff the bird, and then put it in the oven. But as far as we go, before we get into the stuffing we're going to do, let's talk about all the different types. And quite honestly, there's probably as many types of stuffing as there are people at your table. Not to mention, different likes and all. I mean, you can do your traditional bread and sage stuffing. You can do a cornbread stuffing. It could have oysters in it. Some people put cranberries in it. Other people put sausage in it. There's really, again, no wrong way to do it. So, this is something that's incredibly personal, because oftentimes when we think of Thanksgiving, and we think of all the traditional family outings we've had over the years, one of the first things that comes to mind is that stuffing. And who, in fact, who made the stuffing? Oh, I like Graham's stuffing, I like Mom's stuffing, whatever it is. There's giblets in this one, there isn't in that one, etc. So there's all kinds of ways, but stuffing's an important element to it, and you certainly have to have it on your table. So the first thing that, what we've decided to do, I should say, is to actually do a very traditional stuffing, which is how I personally like it. And that means it's going to be a bread stuffing with sage. It has a little celery and onion in it, some butter. It's a very quick stuffing, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So let's bring some stuff out. The first thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you how we chop our vegetables, and then we'll bring it all out together, and we will put it all together for us. Okay? So let me grab the veggies. So we're going to start by cutting up the celery. And to do that, we take our knife, and we've washed this celery. We're going to need, as the recipe said, about 2/3 of a cup. So we're going to wash the celery. We're going to trim off any little ends that might be a little discolored and get rid of those. And then we're just going to slice it. We want it a fine chop. Nobody likes to bite into a really big piece of celery as they're in their stuffing. So we're going to do a fine chop. And the easiest way to do that is to take the celery stalks and start by slicing them long right down the middle. And sometimes you have to do that 2 or 3 times to get to the right size. About this size is really very good. It's probably a little thinner than a pencil. And we'll just do all of them, and then we'll stack them together. I'm using just a chef knife here. It's actually called a Sudoku knife. I'm probably saying that wrong, but that's okay. And I'm using the tip because it's a little easier to just slice down with it in control. Now, for those of you at home who are always wondering how you should hold a knife, which is my biggest pet peeve when I'm teaching people to cook, you want to hold your knife right on the blade. So here's your knife here. You have your thumb right here. You have your index finger fold it over that, gives you a lot more control when you're cutting, especially when we're about to chop it finely. So keep your knife like that. It's a little strange. It'll only take you a couple of moments, or a couple of times, I should say, to get comfortable with it, but then you'd be amazed at how much more efficient you'll be in your chopping and your cutting. You don't want to do that. You bring that finger right back down here. So what we're going to do now, we have it all sliced to about the right thickness we'd like. We're going to hold it all together. The other thing I want you to notice is what my fingers look like. I am holding my fingers like this, which means if I held it like that and start cutting, I can easily cut my finger. I don't choose to do that today. I've done that enough in my life. Instead, if you hold it back a little bit like a claw, then your knife will stay against this part of your finger and not cut you. So if you do that, you hold it down tight. You just almost a rocking motion, and you're just going to slice it, as I said, in little thin areas. As you're doing it, just slide your fingers down to get the rest of them. Make it comfortable for you, so as you just saw me slide it all the way back up into the center of the board. There's no rush on this, so take your time. Get the control that you need to make it proper. And there you go. We have our finely chopped celery. Now we needed about 2/3 of a cup, so as I said, this is more than that, so we'll put it on in. If you like celery, don't feel bad, just, you can add extra. We're going to put this aside for just a moment. All right, and then this extra, actually this here we're going to get rid of. Oops, way out. And this extra here, you know what? I'm just going to throw that in our stuffing too. Now we have our onion. This is a nice size onion. That's about all you need. You can probably go a little smaller and get to the 2/3 cup. Now the thing about onions is there are two ways you can slice them. The first way, which I'll show you, is if you want it to stay pretty much and keep its shape. And the second way is if you are looking to soften it. So in this case, I would like to soften it. So I'm going to show you the proper way to cut it when you do that. But no matter which option you choose, you got to peel it first. So easiest way to peel it, I believe, you take it. Again, you notice my fingers are kind of curved back to protect it. I'm going to slice off the top, flip it around, slice off the bottom, put that aside. Then I'm going to slice it right down the middle. Now, you might hear people referring to pole to pole. And what that means is if you look at this as the Earth, right, and the top part was the North Pole, down here was the bottom, the South Pole. Cutting the onion pole to pole means you're cutting it that way. Cutting the onion the other way, obviously, is the opposite way. But first thing you want to do is peel it. And as I mentioned, the pole to pole cut is actually if you want to keep its shape. So say you're making a nice casserole or a stir fry and you want to know that that's an onion, then the way that you would cut it is straight like this. And it actually holds its shape much better when it's cooked. If you're doing something like we're doing, where it's going to be almost like a flavoring in something as opposed to a real star in it, then you want to cut it the other way because it will soften more quickly when you cut it the other way. And we want our onions to be soft and beautiful, and so therefore, not pole to pole, we're going to cut it straight down side to side. I don't know what you'll call that. We can come up with a name for it. But again, very finely chopped. We're looking for 2/3 of a cup as the recipe had called for. And what we're going to do to get a fine chop is we are actually going to start pole to pole, just to cut it in half. Now this is a little tricky. However you're comfortable, go for it. But again, just hold that onion close together. Some people say keep that bottom on and only slice in enough so it stays together. You can certainly do that if you're comfortable. I personally just like to go and cut it like this. Here we are again. Once we've sliced it all that way, we just hold it together with our hands, and then we take and we slice across. Small. Don't worry about it if it falls apart. We'll get there. There's no wrong way to do these things. You know that by now if you watched my shows. If you got some extra pieces that you didn't quite get, just go back and chop them. No stress. You got enough stress at Thanksgiving. You don't need stress on how to cut an onion. If you want to run a knife right through it afterwards, you're all set. And that's perfect for what we need. Again, that's plenty. We only needed about 2/3 of a cup. This is a 1 cup measure, so I'm just kind of eyeing it. Again, you don't have to be exact. That's the wonderful thing about savory cooking. We'll put that right in there, and now we're all set to go into actually saute it up. Okay, so we got our veggies all cut. We've got our celery and the onions. You know how to do that properly now that you've seen me do it. The stuffing also includes butter. That's what we're going to start with. Several different spices. We've got some chicken stock here that we're going to use, and let's just show you how we put it all together. We start with a 1/2 cup of butter. A 1/2 cup of butter, as most of you I'm sure know, is simply 1 stick. So we're going to scrape all the goodness off there. Put that aside. That melts really quickly. So obviously my pan was warm, and couple that with the fact that we're using an induction stove, and this will be a nice, quick thing we're putting together. So as that butter is finishing melting, I'm going to put the onions in and let those cook. We've got about 2/3 of a cup of onion. If you like onion, feel free to add more. If you want to add other things into your stuffing, this is about the time you do it. And what I mean by that is, say you do like sausage crumbles in there. You could add some sausage to it right now. If you would like cranberries, if you like oysters, the oysters you might want to add a little bit because they'll overcook. But if you have anything like that, this is the time to add it. But again, you know me, purist, we're going with just some onions and celery here. So that's starting to sizzle up nicely. We're going to add our celery. Now this is definitely a little bit more than 2/3 of a cup, and we talked about that. It's just there was only a little bit left, so why waste it? Let's just put it right on there. Nobody ever got mad at me for putting a little extra celery in the stuffing, so we'll kind of go with that. All we're doing now is we're going to give that a chance to saute up a bit. We're going to let that soften for a few moments. I've got it kind of on a medium-high heat. It doesn't take that long, and while it's doing that, however, we're going to add some seasoning to it. Now, one of the most famous seasonings, of course, for Thanksgiving is sage, and the other is what's known as poultry seasoning. I'm sure you've all seen both. The sage that we're going to use is a rubbed ground sage, which you can get at your grocery store. Same with poultry seasoning. Poultry seasoning actually has sage in it. I put a little more in it because I think it needs a little more. So what I've got here, which one do I've got here? This is my sage. I'm doing about a teaspoon or so of sage, ground sage. I'm doing a couple teaspoons of the poultry seasoning. Putting that in. We also have some parsley, so I'm putting in about a tablespoon of parsley. And then we have a little bit of black pepper and just a tiny bit of thyme. So it's about a 1/4 teaspoon each of black pepper and thyme. And oh my God, if you were here right now, I'm sure these camera guys are smelling it. It really does smell like Thanksgiving in this place. There's no question. So once that is all mixed together, which it really is right now, it doesn't take very long at all, we're going to add to that about 2 cups of chicken stock. Now, this is chicken stock. Let me get that base right out of there. This is chicken stock that I actually made from a base. And what I mean by that is it is not a bouillon cube, because if you ever watched my shows, you never want to use a bouillon cube because it's really all salt. This is actually from something called Better Than Bouillon. You can actually get this at your grocery store now. I highly recommend it. It is right where you would normally find your bouillon cubes. This is next to it. This stays fresh in your refrigerator for months if you want it to. It's very easy to use. It's about a teaspoon per cup of water, and it really makes a nice base. The first ingredient on this is chicken. There's very little sodium in it. You can even get a low sodium version of it. And I highly recommend it. They make it in different flavors as beef and seafood, etc. But you definitely want to use something like that if you're not going to make the stock yourself. As I mentioned, though, when we were prepping the turkey, you could use turkey stock. So if, say, you have gravy, somebody's bringing the gravy, the little giblets in the neck that you had boiled up to create a little turkey stock, you could use in here as well or instead of. So just keep that in mind. Now this is boiling up, and that's all you needed to get to. From there, we're going to add our croutons. What you have here, it seems like an awful lot of croutons for this little bit of liquid, but trust me when I tell you, it will absorb it very quickly. This is about 8 cups of croutons, and all I'm going to do is pour them right in. Give them a quick second here. Pour in the rest. Oh, don't forget that one. Put that away. Going to give it a little bit of a stir. And I'm actually going to turn the heat way down while I'm doing that. Just turn it around, flip it over. Put all that back in there just like you do when you're home. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it up for a few and just let those, the moisture absorb. I'm going to put it way down to about 1, like the lowest level it can go. We're just going to give this just a couple minutes to absorb all of the juices and and get nice and soft. And then what we'll do is we'll come back. The turkey should be ready, and then we will show you how we take the turkey, put the stuffing, and we'll have a nice bite and see how we did. Okay, now as you can tell, this bird is done. At least it says it's done. And what I mean by that is the little guy here popped right out. And that usually indicates that the turkey has reached the temperature. At least that's the idea. However, I always like to double check because, you know, chances are you have all kinds of folks at your turkey dinner, from the older folks to young folks, and they're very susceptible to not feeling well if they don't eat it cooked at the right temperature. So let's double check everything, shall we? You can pull this right out and put that off to the side. There's 3 places I like to double check it. The first is right at the breastbone. Now the breastbone is right down the center here. And as you know, this is all the breast meat. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick the thermometer right in here, which is towards the back, and we're angling it right to the bone. Okay? And what that needs to get to, let me get my glasses on so I can see, is at least 165. Now if you can see that, it certainly has gotten there. So this did not lie, which is great. Now you've also probably had the experience, which is not necessarily a pleasant one, where you'll bite into turkey or chicken and the leg has got a little red inside and all. Well, again, to make sure that is not the case, you want to take the temperature right here in the thigh area. Let's get that down and make sure that that too reaches at least 165, and in fact it does. And then one more area, I like to get it where the two kind of meet, the thigh and the leg meet, and that is one other area where there is an awful lot of meat and bone, and you want to make sure that that reaches the proper temperature. And we are certainly at the proper temperature in all 3 cases here. So there's only one thing left to do before we get to cut and eat it, and that's to let it rest. Now the reason you let things rest, whether it be turkey or beef or anything like that, is that it allows the juices, there's some scientific thing that happens, and all the juices and all go back into the muscle, into the meat that you're actually eating. And it is not only it is a much juicier and much nicer flavor if you let it rest those few minutes, it is also easier to carve if you let it rest those few minutes. So what we're going to do to let anything rest, all you have to do is get a nice piece of foil that fits it and kind of put it right over it. And you're doing that partly to keep it warm and also so the steam doesn't come out and the juices don't leave. And we're just going to let that sit there literally like that for about 15 minutes. After that 15 minutes, we'll take it out, we'll put it on a cutting board, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how we're going to carve this up. Our stuffing's all done. Then we're going to actually be able to enjoy it. So give me a few minutes and we'll be right back and we'll show you how we carve this bad boy up. Okay, so as you can tell, and you did before, we have a beautiful looking turkey here. I've moved it to our cutting board. Now this cutting board has a little ridge around it that will capture some of the juices as we in fact cut it. That will certainly leach out some juices. If you have a bigger cutting board, you might want to use a little bit of a bigger one. You can do it just like when we initially prepped the turkey. You can put it on a cookie sheet to collect it. It's up to you however you want to do it. All I really want to show you right now, though, is the proper way to cut it, or a way to cut it. This was the way that works for me. And it is, you can go out on the internet, on YouTube, and you can find 19 different ways to do this. They all really are very similar. The trick is to don't get a huge knife. It's actually easier to manipulate and move around with the smaller one. Other than that, it's just a matter of being careful. And what I mean by that is this is pretty warm. I like to use gloves. That helps not only from a heat standpoint, but also I think people appreciate it when you use gloves for food they're about to eat. So I'm so used to working with gloves from the restaurant that it almost feels strange not to have them. So we're going to use this, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the little plastic anchor that the turkey comes with. So, remember I showed you before, it attaches the legs, it keeps them close together. So I'm going to rip that out of there a little bit, and sometimes it takes a second. Don't get frustrated. There you go. Get that right out. We'll put that off to the side here. Actually, I shouldn't put it on the platter. I'll put it, let me get another one real quick. We'll put that off to the side. So we get rid of that. Clearly, we don't need that. So there's a couple ways you can do this. The first one is you want to separate the biggest piece here, which are the leg and the thigh, from the turkey. To do that, you can tell there's a little bit of the skin that connects the two. So if you just take a nice sharp knife and you just kind of poke that in there and just let the turkey bend the leg down. So you bend that leg down and it's very hot. And it really will just fall right off. There's the leg. See, it didn't take much time at all. If it's cooked properly, it shouldn't. The thigh, however, and this guy's given me a little bit of trouble because he should have come off easily too, but because it's very hot, he's given me a little difficulty. So we're going to move that thigh bone. Whoa, that's very hot. And we're going to pop that out, which is right here if you can see it. And then we can cut between the two. And that will just cut down and take that thigh piece off. Now, this is rested about 15 minutes. It might have been able to use a little bit more resting time. The more resting time you give it, the easier it will be to stay together. I removed the bone right there. I should probably take it off the platter, but that's okay. Here's all this thigh meat. We're going to move over to this platter, right like that. Now, you can slice the thigh meat if you want to, but it doesn't tend to slice very well. It tends to fall apart just like it is here. So we're going to leave it. I know, me personally, I love the skin, so I'm going to leave that right with that. So for whoever's the lucky one to be the first one fed, we're going to put some of that in there. The next thing, after you get the thigh meat and the leg off, is to go for the breast. And to do that, the best thing to do is actually to cut the entire breast off of the turkey. So right down the center here is the back spine here. You're going to go right to the right or left of it, and you can kind of feel it. And you're just going to come on down and just follow the bone. So I don't know if you can see that. We're just following it around the edge here. I wish I could do it backwards, but I really can't. But because this is so perfectly cooked, it does not take very long for it to fall off the bone itself. And you just, what's called scoring it. Here I am trying to do it lefty. You just score it where it needs to, and just help it along. And what you have here is a beautiful piece of breast meat that you can flip over like that. And then just take your knife and slice it. You want to slice it against the grain. Now, of course, the skin is nice and crispy, so I'm going to get a little bit of a bigger knife to do this. And cut that through. This should be a nice little even pieces, and of course it's not, so I'm going to take the skin off so I can have it that way. Again, this is pretty hot, so it's kind of falling apart on me. But it is delicious white meat. Again, you'll take those nice bits and you'll put those on your platter. And then you can finish cutting up all of that. And you'll do the same to the other side. We'll just leave that there. Again, use your smaller knife. Whoop. Let's just take the leg. We're going to push that down. That kind of comes right off of it itself. Put that on the plate. Then you're going to go for the thigh meat, and you're going to try to break that off. I'm not going to do it here because we really don't need to for what we're doing. And then you do the same with this side of the breast. You would come in, you would just slice around it. As you're doing it, your knife, you can feel that bone. Just slice right around that breastbone, and you will end up with a nice piece of whole breast here. And I think what you will find, however, is that you want to let that cool for a few before you slice it, and it will stay better than mine did over there, for sure. All right, so here we have the second breast. Whoop! And that's so hot I'm going to leave it there, but that's how you do it there. And then, of course, you have your wings, which you can just take with your knife, kind of pull it away with your hand, and there'll be a piece that pops out. The joint will pop out, and then you can just cut right through that there. And then you have your wing. And if remember when we tucked that piece of wing under, it kept it nice and moist and tender, and that is, it hasn't overcooked any of that wing meat as a result. And then literally, cleaning a turkey, you got to do a little bit with your hands. As you can tell, no matter how good you are, if you were to slice off this breast, you're going to have pieces that hang out. Just grab them with your hands. And again, if you're wearing gloves, it's not a problem. And put those on your platter because you do not want to waste those by any stretch of the imagination. And that's how you clean the turkey. So we've done that. I'm going to leave this mess right here because I really need to have a bite of this. It smells amazing in this studio. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little plate here, and I'm going to put a little bit of the turkey on it. And I'm a white meat kind of person. I'll add a little thigh too, why not? And then this is our stuffing over here, which has been sitting nicely for a while. And you can just stir that up a bit. You may find you like your stuffing a little more moist, in which case you can just add some more juices to it from the turkey after it comes out. Or you may find you like it just as it is, completely up to you. But here we have our stuffing with our little bits of celery and onion you can see in there. We have a little white meat, a little dark meat, and let's give it a try, shall we? Okay, really delicious, very, very moist. And again, if you just follow what we did here with the salting, you don't have to brine a turkey overnight to get the right level of moisture. I'm telling you, half of the battle is letting it rest. If you let it rest, those juices will work themselves back into the tissues, and it will be an incredibly delicious piece. So this here is delicious. The stuffing, let's give that a quick little try. Again, your traditional sage and bread stuffing, really quite delicious. And all you have to remember to get it that way is to make sure when you cook with love, because you will definitely taste the difference. Thanks, and we'll see you the next time.